People, buckle up for the shaka for today. Jamaican Maroons were not runaway slaves, but undefeated indigenous people. There is a proud part of Jamaica Maroon legacy that the Maroons themselves don't seem to know. Instead of telling the same to history, they tell the lies of the white man about themselves, which seems to show that they are not well versed in their own history. So no, they have a proud history, but they ignore it in order to choose one of mediocrity. Hello, my people. Skywalker here again to trouble these waters. I want to implore you to subscribe to this channel to stay abreast of the discussions and also hit the notification bell. Here, you always get something to take away, so hit the thumbs up button to contribute to the movement. Jamaican Maroons were not runaway slaves. There were runaway slaves among the Jamaican Maroons. For some reason, the Maroons don't seem to fight to keep their authentic history intact, especially in a state where the white man will change the history of how things were in order to give an impression or to score points. Black people in general, because they are not seeing these lies as anything significant, become complicit to their own destruction. Many will see that rhetoric as a small thing, as if it did not matter if Maroons were indigenous or if they were runaway slaves. It is extremely important because the Maroons were duped once and given a treaty, and now they are duped again and are ready to concede the fact that it was their land along with the Tainos. People, you must begin to wise up. How long is the white man going to make you be the fool? Columbus saw the Tainos on the coast. Tainos were on the coastline, and indigenous Jamaicans were in the near inland regions. At least that's how it was when Columbus came with African navigators that knew the place and who the Tainos and other occupants were. Okay? They knew the place and they knew the Tainos and the other occupants. Some of these Africans even knew how to communicate in Taino language because they were on the coast. The Tainos met Columbus first, but take this into consideration one more time. The Maroons were inland and the Tainos on the coast because the Tainos were on the coast. The Taínos met Columbus first. They explained that other people lived inland. These other people said they came to the island many years before when their vessels were lost at the sea and were marooned or exiled on the land. So this is what the Taínos was telling Columbus African interpreters. These other people said they came to the island many years before when their vessels were lost at sea and were marooned or exiled on the land. They had, after a long period, reconnected with West Africa, and now African vessels were coming to Jamaica. You heard those last 5 or 6 words? African vessels were coming to Jamaica. Think about those words because they are important. You are you have a wrong, a very false vision of the history of how things were. You have a very false vision. You are thinking of primitive people at points when you should be thinking of the most advanced in the world at the time. Okay? The Taino did not use the word marooned to Columbus. The word they used was similar to ex Jamaica, which means to be exiled. In English and in Spanish, it means to be marooned. So the word maroon is actually a Spanish word that interprets the Taino's account of these Africans being exiled for many years. So the word was Jamaica, and it's not even from a Taino language, it is from an African language. Africans were always coming this way, and they knew the Maroons well. The Taino hated African travelers because they said they were arrogant or rude towards them. Moreover, when Columbus came to do evil, it was the Africans that brought him here. Not, I'm gonna go back again. Hmm? When Columbus came to do his evil, it was Africans that brought him here. Okay? When the Taino said Africans, they did not include the Maroons. I want you to get that clear. For they were now indigenous, right? And it's a toss up to whether they came before the Taino or the Taino came before them, as was said. The Amerindians in India went and saw the Africans there, right? The Amerindians in America, I mean. The Tainos most likely came and saw those other Africans there, the ones that lived inland, right? Not the ones that lived on the coast. So when the Tainos said Africans, it did not include the Maroons, for the Maroons were already indigenous and known as Jamaicans. The Taino would have said the Jamaicans and not the Maroons, and not, sorry, the Africans. He would say the Jamaicans, meaning the Maroons. The Africans were those that came directly from Africa, including kidnapped humans that Europeans brought to forcefully enslave. So although they were brothers, one was Maroon and the other was African. And I want you to get the picture clearly. So the truth is that Africans were already coming here, and that is why they could take on the job to show Columbus where he wanted to go. He did not want to go to no damned India. He wanted to find the West Indians that lived in the West to conquer them in the continuation of a 1,000 years war that still goes on, but is just about to end. Even the woman, Ya Shantiwa, whom the Ghanaians hail as a hero in Ghana, is also hailed as a hero in Jamaica by Jamaicans. She is referred to as Nanny of the Maroons. She was seen in Ghana as undefeatable. She disappeared in Ghana, where she was fighting for her people, and ended up in Jamaica fighting for her people. Many said she was captured and brought for forced labor, but those with great faith in her skill and her craft said that it was impossible. If she was kidnapped, why did she not end up on a slave plantation? Africans were sailing their own great vessels from West Africa to Jamaica, and the Tainos talked about them as people they disliked. I spoke with a Taino family that told me about Africans coming and how they disliked Africans. And these Taino had very curly hair, but they were short and black. Every one of them was quite short. And the reason they said they disliked the Africans was that the Africans were like very arrogant and rude to them. Christopher Columbus' main mission was for land piracy. That's what he was about. So when he came and found the West Indian, he said that he thought he was in India. He didn't want him to be the West Indian anymore because he had an agenda, because he did not want to refer to them as who they are. All Indians in the West are connected to the ravaged Indians in the East, who, at the beginning of the 1,000 Years' War, were jet black people. After near 2,000 years of that war, they were mixed. Some went to Africa, and for the particular case, West Africa. Not all Aboriginals had the same hair type or height from the beginning, but they were all Aboriginals. Some were like what you call Hamitic, or like the Nubians. Others were a Semitic type that had strong mm, populations in India. So there were Semitic type that had strong populations in India. Those were desolated for the entire period of the Thousand Years' War. Those are the people that are related to West Africans, like in Ghana, Senegal, and these places. Their nations became mixed with other peoples over these great nomadic years. However, Columbus knew that many of them were raising empires in the West, and he wanted to chase them. I am going to repeat that you will find Eastern Indian bloodlines from the past in all of the Semitic people in the Caribbean, include at least those that came from West Africa, including the West African type and the Taino. They were two of the general type of aboriginals. In India today, there are still both types. The type that are much like the aboriginals in Australia are being hated the most in India because light-skinned Indians, just like the Latino people, believe they are actually white, and white people feel like their job on earth is to oppress the black race. If you want white people to love you, just oppress a black person. And a lot of other races do that just to get to be liked by the white person. And some people do. Look at Barack Obama. Look at Barack Obama. And when I say some people do, I mean some black people do too, especially leaders. Look at Barack Obama. Look at Black Obama. Black Obama. Black leaders all over the world take that strategy, but they are going away now. It is good over evil time now, and the Judases will have to go. This is one of the main messages that I have come to bring to you. This is why I say they should clean house. Clean house. No cult and no God will save them. It is written in the cosmic, and after this point, all the harm they bring to the black man will come to them a thousand folds. But for the black man who helps, it's going to be worse. Columbus did not want to say these black people were the West Indians. He did not want to say they are the West Indians. For the white world knew that West Indians were indigenous to the part of the globe. The Maroons themselves would be of West Indian stock. In order to make a good land piracy case, Columbus tried to get rid of all the Tainos by genocide. Then he changed the interpretation of the word for being marooned or exiled to land of wood and water. For if he came and saw people exiled on a land, he could not claim to have discovered it. But he still had to explain the existence of these people. This is why he claimed that they came as slaves with everyone else. At first, he felt like he could just use them as slaves and say he brought them all from Africa as slaves, for slavery was legal. The problem is he could not capture them and he could not defeat them in a war. They were the boss around the place. In fact, they realized that an all-out war with Maroons would see them losing the fight. So they journeyed to Africa to kidnap others. That too they used as traction to sell the rhetoric that the Maroons were all brought from Africa, but slave ran away and formed a bush gang. That's utter nonsense. There was a maroon civilization in Jamaica that the British or Spanish could never defeat. At first, when slaves ran away, these maroons would have pity for them and save them. Eventually, they came to an agreement with the white folks to return them to the plantations. Many of these negotiations were made on a need for compromise. The Maroons became so foolish as to make the white man able to negotiate and win the blade. Right when they were about to give up, right when they were about to give up, they came and negotiate and tricked the Maroon every time. Slave rebellions were becoming overpowering, and if the Maroons had joined with these enslaved Africans, if the Maroons had joined with the enslaved Africans instead of negotiating with the white man, the British would be running away from Jamaica very quickly. Instead, the Maroons made very damning agreements with the white man. No, because they did not protect their history, they co-signed to the lies that the Maroon was established by runaway slaves. The Maroons were in this land before Columbus, so how could it be established as a group of runaway slaves? Also, the treaty that the Maroons signed was when the British was on their last leg. They would either have to leave or obtain a compromise. For the enslaved and the Maroons together would be too much. First, they got the Maroons to side with them, even stopping Paul Bogle from driving the white man into the sea. Then they agreed to splitting the land they owned with Britain, but the white man would get nearly all of it, and they would get small parcels in the worst areas of themselves, the worst areas for themselves. It was a trick that they fell to. Jamaica belonged to Maroons and Tainos. Those were the people that Columbus came and saw. He almost genocided all the Tainos, but the Maroons were still here. But then it seemed like the Maroons negotiated their victory away. They negotiated their victory away. Anyway, water under the bridge. The captives that came here are their brothers. Together, they both subscribe to lies about crown lands, and the Maroons subscribe to lies that Columbus came before them. This is extremely mind blowing. When will black people worldwide begin to wise up? A black person in America might feel like laughing at the Maroons, but if he ever heard the exact but worse con that he helped to con himself with, he would not go there. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, people. Peace out.